Alrighty. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here to practice with me. And today is the third in the series of really explaining deeply the surrendered presence practice. And we have already talked about stage one, which is dropping in. And as we practice that experiencing, just being with what we are experiencing without judgment, without needing to change anything, we're simply aware of it, it becomes more and more automatic to know what we're experiencing. And then we move into stage two, which is deepening our presence. So knowing our experience begins the process of being present in our being. And then we deepen that, we sort of stabilize it through that second stage. And now the third stage is the learning to let go. The learning to be able to relax. And when I say relax, I don't just mean a physical relaxation, although that's part of it. But it's also learning to allow our defenses to relax, our ego to relax, our mind to relax. We'll notice all of those things. So I'm going to talk more next time in stage 4 about the why it's important for us to let go. I know many of us have heard ourselves say, I just need to let go. So some of us know there's an importance to it, but I'll talk more about that. But this session, I really want to focus on the body as teacher. And it may bleed over, like you might get a sense that it's not just the body that's being the teacher. There's these other parts of our being that we're also attending to. But the focus is on the body. And it's been about 300 years or so, somewhere since enlightenment happened to the human race, that the intellectual mind is valued above all. So the logical, the scientific, what is provable. We moved into that realm. That's the culture that we now live in. And these are all wonderful things. We all know how much we benefit from this approach, logical approach, scientific approach, to be able to experiment and observe. But the problem with it, of course, is that it almost completely took over. And it's been maybe the last 50, 60 years that particularly Eastern practices have come into our awareness that help us come back to body experience and having a wider sense of our being. I know that my experience of my religious tradition was very much a thinking process, a reading, a studying, a thinking about what I need to do or not to do. And the body really did not enter in any way except in a negative way, the ways that we made it an enemy. So what we have lost is our ability to experience the wonder of our body and the wonder of our full being. It's just atrophied, just like a muscle that never, ever, ever gets used. And so this practice is really building that back again. So if you think about it, if somebody asks you where you know from, where you know from, it might come up that you say, well, I know from my gut, or I know from my heart. And we do use those, or those do. I sort of think that they, in those occasions, they have enough energy to push past our mind. That generally we go to the mind first, we attempt to figure something out, but then sometimes the rest of our being sort of pushes through to be noticed unless we practice giving our attention there. So it's rare practicing being in our physical experience is not something we do very often, and then staying there without intellectualizing it or making meaning of it, or what does this mean? So our previous two stages have very much been addressing this. First stage being about experience, second stage about feeling things in the physical body, as the first stage does, feeling ourselves grounded. And the third stage is actually a transition stage. It is the stage that guides us into the fourth stage, in which we can completely surrender. We can allow ourselves to just sort of meld into surrender. We can lose the edges of our being. So in stage 3, we actually honor the body as teacher. We're honoring the body as our guide into that next stage. So generally, I'm aware, here's an example, when I go to the dentist, I notice that I just naturally tense up. And that while I'm lying there in the chair, I tell my body repeatedly, okay, belly, let go, relax those muscles, relax your neck, just relax, everything's okay here. And in this practice, we're going to flip that on its head a little bit. Instead of the head telling us how to relax or where to relax, we're allowing the body to show us how it lets go. And what's amazing about it is that the body can actually teach the mind, the ego, the defenses around the heart. It can teach all of them to let go. So I invite us into practice. And first, I want to affirm the presence of love. And I invite us to bring our awareness to that presence. It's nothing that we create, simply what we become aware of. It was here before we arrived. It will be here when we leave. It is here for us, to support us in our becoming. And in some sense, it expects nothing of us, and yet it is continually drawing us on, inviting us into this development or transformation. this journey that we're on. And because it's got us, we can relax. So I invite you now to simply drop in to your experience. This is stage one. We'll just stay here briefly. And to begin in your body, and to simply notice what the body is experiencing this morning. And always remembering that we notice without judgment, without the need to fix. We may choose eventually to fix, but the goal is to stay with the experience rather than jumping to whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. And then shifting your awareness into what I call our inner, or more inner, deeper inner experience. So the experience of mind, heart, spirit, energies, images. What is your being experiencing this morning? And then to also include how you are experiencing your place in the world, your space, your environment. So this part allows us to not only feel our own inner experience, but also feel ourselves as a part of the world while having an inner experience. And so now I invite you to draw your attention to your feet or to whatever where your body is coming into contact with what you're seated on. And just to allow your awareness to rest in the interface between your feet and the floor, or your body and the seat. And in this part, you're not looking necessarily at what the experience is. You're simply resting your awareness in that one space. This more deeply grounds your presence. And then beginning to notice the way gravity is acting upon your body. And how it is drawing you into the earth and holding you here. This is a really subtle turn, but an important one, I think, in that we don't think about us sending our roots down into the ground or grounding ourselves. We think instead of how, not just think, we experience how the earth is holding us. And this is part of that enlightenment thing. It's true. We know it is. This force called gravity. And when we notice that we are held and we don't have to do the holding, we can begin to relax. And the same is true of love. That other great force in the universe, the greatest force in the universe. When we know that it holds us, we can let go. So we're moving into stage 3 now. And many of you may have had practices of observing the breath coming in and out of the nose, watching the chest rise and fall. But this particular way we do it is really important. And it's because we can observe the breath in its whole cycle, sort of a ellipse or circular cycle. And we can sense the breath arising from one point, which allows us to gently hold our attention, our awareness along the path of that cycle. So imagine a point in your low belly, and it's particularly a really grounding point in your body is 3 finger breaths below the belly button, 3 finger breaths in. Imagine that point. Then we're going to just spend a prolonged time, 2 or 3 minutes, of simply observing the breath arise from that point, And as the belly and chest rises, the breath comes in and up. And then as the breath comes to its fullness, it kind of lands at the bottom of the throat. And then it's released and drops back down again into that same point in the belly. And our practice is to, again, just stay with the breath as it arises, comes to its fullness, and then goes back out again and down. And this is a little add-on and pretty subtle, but just seeing if you can imagine that your awareness also arises with the breath, rather than focusing on the breath from the brain or the head, that your awareness is actually on that journey, traveling along that path with the breath. And don't force it, it may not work. If not, just go back to the usual observation. Now extend your awareness, your experience to your whole body, particularly the trunk. And now just watch what happens in the body as the breath rises and falls again. So maybe just observing or allowing your awareness to rest on your shoulders. and allowing your awareness to rest in the rib cage. We probably all remember from some point that what's happening here physically is that the muscles contract to draw in the breath, and then they all release, and the breath flows out. This is one of the wonders of our physical being, that the body needs no help at all from us to do this vital cycle of drawing in what it's needed and then releasing and carrying out what is no longer of use. And noticing that when that breath goes all the way out, there is no fear in the body about whether or not the next breath is coming. It trusts the cycle of flowing in and flowing back out again. Now, as you watch that breath go all the way out, begin to name it as letting go, as surrender. When that breath drops back down into the low belly, letting your mind recognize this is what letting go feels like. Experiencing how natural it is in the body and how we know it creates a struggle in the mind, the ego, even the heart. So, as I say, with each stage of the practice, if we didn't go any further than this is a perfect practice. And of course, I notice my body has become very relaxed. My mind has become quieter. And that's wonderful. And ultimately, the goal is to be able to completely surrender ourselves, which is an effort and work, but our body knows how. Thank you so much for practicing with me. I will see you next time.